This movie needs to make at least $600 million to break even, let alone turn a profit, which is the goal of all films. So again, I'm not seeing the path forward here, man. And I know it's coming really soon, but if they actually release this next week in Europe, the piracy is going to eat any North American business. At least I think it's going to make a substantial difference. And I think those numbers show it.
Yeah. So, besides hurting Christopher Nolan's feelings, there seems to be some legit concerns as to why the release of his latest film might be a little bit of a problem.
Well, I've seen too much.
Well, we'll try and keep up.
How would you like to die?
Old.
Now, the problem with this movie, well, as with most things, root is the money of that problem. And the problem here being about $200 million worth of problem. And that is because the studios, they want their money. You know, the studios put the money in here to make this, and just like the mafia, anybody else who funds things out there, banks, anybody, they're like, all right, you know, bitch, that was a loan. You know, you have to perform. You got to find some kind of way to get it back, which is going to be a problem in this day and age because, well, one thing leads to another. You know, if they put this movie out right now with Big Roni out there, and she's going to make a little bit of a problem for people to get into the theaters and fill those seats. And if people ain't going in and filling the seats, then chances are they're probably going to have to find some kind of other way to put this out there for people. Maybe put some in the theater. Maybe put some out there on home video, on VOD. And if that happens, well, here's where the big complication comes in, and that is piracy. And this is from, where's this from, Christian? You got this story.
Variety.
Variety is the headline here. Why Christopher Nolan's Tenet represents a big piracy risk around the world. You know, as I said, this is something where people are, they're trying to get this out here in the theaters, but people are not going to go in there with theaters being at anywhere from 30 to 50% capacity. People are going to probably even be too scared to go to the theaters. And if the studios want to get their money back, they've seen the pattern for certain films out there, even though those movies aren't as big, but there's been certain patterns out there for movies that have done all right going to VOD. Not everybody's happy about that, but it is a very tempting, somewhat solution to do this. Chris, you want to elaborate on this a little bit more?
Yeah, man. So piracy, and I think I've been pounding this particular drum for a couple weeks when we've been talking about Tenet, which I said if they're going to do an international rollout first, I think we run the risk of huge piracy. Now, the last billion-dollar movie that did a staggered release that actually opened up overseas first was my movie, Aquaman. But I think we would both agree that Aquaman isn't necessarily built on the big secrets or the big plot twists that Tenet seems to be. Nolan is talking about how he wants to keep the reviews as shrouded in secrecy as he possibly can. And I think that there's a reason for that. But here's an interesting thing. When I was researching this whole piracy issue, I found out that even staggered releases from New York to LA, right? The first show times that show up in New York at 7 p.m. on a Thursday before a movie comes out, by the time that it rolls out at 7 p.m. on the West Coast, there's already a pirated version of that somewhere. So this is obviously like a problem that we have in our country, let alone on a global scale. So I'm looking at it from the perspective of like, you know, last week I asked how many weeks would it have to be in theater to somehow break even, which we couldn't really determine. It would have to be such a long time because the other factor to that is the theater capacity is different from state to state. If it does open here, it's not opening in LA, San Francisco, or New York, which are usually where things open first. Yeah. So there's so many questions here about like, can Nolan just it's in his best interest. It really is. If you want to make this $1 billion film, because I do think it'll be $1 billion film at this point, you just got to push it to next year. But it seems like he's playing hardball with it, man. And I don't understand if this is the right move, if I'm being bullish on it, or if he is just being way too confident in the product.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the piracy, you'd be crazy to say that that's not a legitimate concern, man. Shit, people now today can even validate it, man. You know, they can actually feel like they're heroes doing it. You know, people out there right now, they can be like, well, shit, if there was ever a time to pirate a movie, it's now. You know, in fact, I would be doing the responsible thing. Staying at home, not spreading corona, not catching corona, you know, almost being a patriot. Not like those assholes who are still trying to go out there and get, you know, that selfishly get self-satisfaction by watching a movie. Not me, man. I don't keep my ass at home. I am doing the right thing. You know, I can see that the piracy more than ever being a concern for these studios. But, you know, looking at some of the things you were talking about, because you're talking about how this is, you know, this is affecting things like theaters throughout the country, man. You know, brick and mortar theaters throughout the country, how that's going to affect them. Again, you know, taking somewhat of probably more of a negative effect or a toll on the economy here. But I also looked at what you brought up here about piracy itself and the effects of piracy, such as loss of money, loss of jobs. And I want to know, I'm just going to go over this with some people out here, especially those who are listening. You can see this if you're watching, but it's key piracy statistics. 126.7 billion viewings worth of U.S. produced TV episodes are pirated every year. There were over 17 million stream rippers in 2018. 70,000 jobs a year are lost in the United States due to music piracy. TV shows remain the most popular content among pirates. I like the way they actually are calling them pirates, man. You know,
yeah,
you know, I do figure them looking like, you know, that dude in Captain Phillips and shit, you know. So,
like actual Somali pirates.
Yeah, like everybody looking like a Somali person sitting up here like downloading this shit. But you know,
that would be an amazing pivot for pirates if all Somali pirates gave up their boats and that was the one place in the world where all pirating came from. You'd be like, They turned that corner. Good for them.
Yeah, it makes you want to make a website, like a torrenting website or a pirating website called "I'm the Captain Now." You know, where we
look, they're shutting down the Pirate Bay every 2 months. We should get up on that, man. That could be our baby.
TV shows remain the most popular content among pirates. There were 106.9 billion visits to pirate websites in 2017. Illegal downloading of copyrighted materials takes up 24% of the global bandwidth. And lastly, here. Annual global revenue losses from digital piracy are between, now I don't know if this is $40 and $97.1 billion in the movie industry or $40 billion to $97 billion.
Yeah, that's a big discrepancy if it's 40 to 97 billion. But no, I think it's 40 billion to 97. And that's the thing. Listen, obviously there's a weird dark side to pirating. And yes, there's a cause and effect to it. But a lot of that can be mitigated if corporations weren't greedy and didn't jack things up. People forget when Napster blew up, it's because the record industry, music industry was basically selling CDs at $30 a pop to the point where like, well, you know, we're fine buying something for the right amount of money and then safe ways and stuff like that, but we're not going to overpay for something. And so these demands happen, but I'm still looking at it from just Nolan's point of view because the box office came back, right? Like we're not really talking about this, like nothing's blowing the up, but we actually got our first box office report since March. And you know, good old SpongeBob, 900,000 in 300 theaters. But even when you extrapolate that, like if you wanted to use that same per average at close to 5,000 theaters, which obviously Tenet would try to do, that's about $13 million of a gross. This movie needs to make at least $600 million to break even, let alone turn a profit, which is the goal of all films. So again, I'm not seeing the path forward here, man. And I know it's coming really soon, but if they actually release this next week in Europe, the piracy is going to eat any North American business. At least I think it's going to make a substantial difference. And I think those numbers show it.
Yeah. Well, you know, okay. So this is why I was going to talk to you about the details in these statistics right here, because I'm not one to like try to go in and cross-examine and poke holes in statistics about piracy. I'm not trying to make a pro-piracy argument here, not at all. But
I am, but go on.
Well, no, well, I'm not. I'm just saying like a lot of this. Sometimes I feel like you're not getting the full story when they say jobs are lost. You're not getting the full details. I think there's, you know, some parts of this can even feel like propaganda from the studios, music and movie studios out there. Again, not a pro-piracy thing right here, but we all have seen throughout the past this argument be made over and over again every time there's a new platform or there's a new technology that's introduced. Cassettes. I mean, this is nothing new to some people who know the history of technology since the 70s and 80s, man. Cassettes, those scared that scared the music industry into thinking that it would kill music. Like this article right here from Open Culture. Home taping is killing music when the music industry waged war on the cassette tape in the 1980s and punk bands fought back. Same thing happened with VHS tapes when those came out. There's always been this alarmist reaction to a change, a disruption, a technology that's introduced. And it's been for everything. Look, the commercials that you see for anti-piracy out there, if you pirate a movie, somebody's grandmother's gonna go hungry or some shit like that. You're gonna if you take money out the mouths of people in the music industry, they're gonna knock an old woman on her head for her purse because they gotta feed their family. You've heard that kind of shit, man. They've had those for a long time. Before they were there for anti-piracy of movie theaters and cell phones and cameras and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you ever seen Don't Copy That Floppy?
No. Oh my God. It sounds amazing. If nothing else for the rhyme scheme.
Don't copy that floppy. And when you say that, I'm going to give you a couple of things right here. Don't copy that floppy. You see the rhyme scheme that's there. And of course, if you put the whole thing of floppy disk, if you start to put it together and think about the time period that it came from, you're probably going to picture exactly what you think with that.
I brought a disc, and we could copy this, okay? And we can play it on my brother's computer.
Did I hear you saying that you're gonna make a copy of a game without paying?
This was back in the day when kids didn't listen unless you were a magical black man that spoke in rhyme.
He came from the computer.
Yeah.
Like, that shit was metal, as they say, man. I feel like I got transported to another world there.
Yeah. Every time there's been a technology that has come up and disrupted things, there has been this fear of piracy. And there is a point to be made that maybe some money was taken out, or there was a chunk taken out of the business. My argument with Tenet is I agree with you 100% that you're gonna have to wait if you really want to recoup everything you think you're gonna recoup, because if you release it now, then you're gonna have to take a hit, and I don't even think that hit is going to come out of piracy. I think for every time that you have to do something when you adjust to any kind of change, you're gonna have to figure in piracy. Or you're gonna have to figure in some kind of way of exchanging this through other people where you're not some money's not going to the studios or to the business. Tenet, they release it now, they have more to lose, I think, from COVID-19, the pandemic, because one of my big arguments here is this is a Christopher Nolan movie, and most of those pirated copies that are going to go out, those are going to be shitty cell phone video, that handy cam video of people recording with a bad camera over in India or something, or China. You're not going to get a good copy of this, and that is not going to take that much of a dent out of this film right here. People want a clean, nice copy. I would be more concerned if there were screeners out there, pristine, nice, clean screeners, and that's not the case. That's not out there right now. So if people want to see this, they're gonna have to watch a shitty version of it. And I can guarantee you that most people are not gonna do that.
Yeah, and that comes down to personal taste, man. I don't know. I saw Star Wars in theaters, the last one, and that was a mistake. And then I watched a cam version of it, and it sort of made it better because I don't know. It was hard to explain. The shittier quality made me more prepared for how bad that movie was going to be. But Tenet is not Star Wars, and I think that's the weird thing. There is genuine enthusiasm for it. And I'm not saying that the piracy is the biggest concern ever, but I think it is coupled with the fact that capacity for theaters is at best 25 or 50% in most places.
Yeah.
It's not going to make that money here long term. There's just no way that it doesn't take a hit unless, again, it improbably takes the Titanic route where it's just in theaters for a year. So if it just makes $8 million every weekend for a year, then sure, it'll make its money eventually. But I still don't understand. All of these things have to do with momentum.
Yeah. And somebody's
it's about the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat is right. I would say either wait are take a hit in the theater, because it's not, what's going to happen is if you release it on VOD, then that is the point where you are going to get pirated copies. That's the one area that you got to be careful of, and be careful of. And I can guarantee you that, yes, you're going to get nice, pristine, clear copies of that, and people are going to take that.
Yeah. I think that will, but I think most people don't know how to pirate shit. I mean, that's the truth. Like, the most people who pirate things, they pirate things for their friends and blah, 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 blah. So I think most people would be willing to pay for that legally, especially if it was reasonably priced.
Yeah. Somebody asked a question. I'll be upfront with you. Somebody said, who is this? Stonery Jack. Jack asked, Corey, if you were to receive a nice, pristine, clean copy of Tenet, would you watch it, or would you wait to go to the theater? Honestly, if we were doing this for a review, I would watch it. And if I liked it that much, I would go to the theater to see it. Movies that I really like, I've gone to see, twice in a theater before. Don't get to do it much these days, but yeah, I would watch it, man.
Yeah, I'd watch it. I have no qualms about that, because I'm not the director who's trying to put people's lives in danger to see his movie. It's a movie, and I don't care how good it is. It's like, it's not gonna make a difference to me, man.
Yeah, people. And I tell you, no, that's a good point. At this moment, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking you're talking about a hypothetical, like, what if the conditions were right and everything was business as usual, everything was normal, no pandemic. But at this moment, yeah, I would. I mean, we just got we talked about this the other day, and this kind of goes to my point. Let's see here. We talked about the other day how we got this movie. The screener came through today for us. For this movie that's been bragging about how they were going to. This movie that's bragging about how they. Wow. Okay, so this throws me off.
And lost to SpongeBob this weekend.
I'm bringing up the trailer for this movie, and they're showing the trailer before the trailer. I'm not lying. Look at this shit. They're showing the trailer for Unhinged before the trailer. But y'all know this movie rating. We've been talking about it for a couple of days now.
Sounds like this. It's light. It's friendly. Sure, that's what your mom meant to do.
No, it's not. Mom,
Press reset.
I don't have anything to apologize for.
They asked us if we wanted to come see this at the theater, and I gave them that look like Russell Crowe. You out your mind? I said, I'll consider it if you really, really, really can convince me that you will have some safety measures in place. But I said, I don't want to go to the theater and watch this. Now, you're probably wondering what this has to do with the bigger story of piracy and whatnot. Well, this was already out in Ireland and some parts of Europe, I think. Unhinged with Russell Crowe. This is already out there. And I did an experiment to go and see if this would be available on torrenting sites. And it wasn't. But a week later, it popped up, and you could only get like shitty handheld video copies of it. So, and now they're about to open this in some limited theaters, I think, maybe here in the States. I'm not sure. But it's already in theaters around in some parts of the world. And not a lot of people are out rushing to pirate this film. Now, to your point, it by no means is Tenet. It's crazy fucking, it's crazy as Russell Crowe running motherfuckers over at a convenience store. So I don't know how many people are rushing to see this, but they were promoting this earlier on, talking about come see Tenet, the movie that's going to get people back in theaters, the movie that is truly going to save cinema. And so far, they haven't seemed to have been taking a huge hit from being released early.
Well, let me ask you this to stir it back to Tenet really quickly, which is this again. If it costs $200 million, the rule of thumb, and by the way, it's $200 to $225 million, so that matters, that little bit difference.
Yeah.
But it's like the rule of thumb is you got to make 3 times that, because after the exhibitors get their end and you have to split your blah, 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 blah. This needs to make at least $600 million. Do you think it's going to make $600 million as presently constructed for its rollout?
Are we talking about just domestic?
No, I mean, it'd have to be overall. Yeah.
I really can't say. The movies had, if they do skip VOD, which I would be all for VOD for them releasing that, but they skip VOD, release it around the world, and release it in some smaller theaters, and leave and probably leave like a window of time open, because they'll have to keep it open for a while. I think there's a possibility they could probably make worldwide $600 million. Yeah. And even with VOD, man, I would wonder if they have to make that money up between opening in theaters around the world and opening in theaters here in the country, limited theaters where people will go, and VOD. I'm still curious to know.
VOD is going to be the unlikely hero that saves the profit margin on the back end. Like, even if they do this and they eventually release it on VOD, I think it'll make enough money there to make it profitable.
Yeah.
But I think they'd make more money by releasing it now, to be completely honest.
I think they would. You know what? I think give people the option. I think if I really got down to it, and maybe I'm a little biased here, but overall, I think they can make the money back easily if they didn't do VOD. But I think VOD would be a big help, and I think VOD would be a way to go. Give people the option of going to the theaters. You have it around the world, and you got people watching at home. If you're going to release this now, in summary, if you were going to release this now, you better use every option that's out there. And you're just going to have to consider that piracy is going to factor into that. And it always does. I don't think piracy is bad. I think look, there's an argument for it being bad, but as far as ruining, the business and putting people out of jobs, like they say, if that was the case, Spotify would be putting a lot of people out of jobs. And that, and Spotify is actually helping. Spotify is not helping artists. That's the main thing, and that's a whole argument for another day. But as far as ruining the music business, no, those fuckers are still making money, man. All right, I mean that's the bottom line. They're still making the money.
Right, but we don't really have a spot. I mean, you could say Netflix and stuff, but that's not the same because it's usually things that have passed their theatrical window or whatever, right? We don't have a Spotify for the film industry. The music industry saw where the weather was going, and they're like, all right, let's get in the room and let's make a deal. The movie industry at every turn seems to be on the opposite side of that. When you have titans like Spielberg trying to make sure Netflix can't be nominated as Best Picture and stuff like that, it screams of an industry that is clearly behind the times and is kicking and screaming to catch up.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll get a quote unquote Netflix of movies out there, but it's definitely something that is a high possibility and people need to be prepared for that. Something like that is going to happen, I think, at some point, because I think streaming is going to be more prominent. And all the people who are pushing against it are the same people that pushed against every new thing that came up. And it's just, you're not going to, hey, look, if you get in the way of progress, you're going to get steamrolled over. I mean, I'm not always saying progress is a great thing, but there's definitely some form of progress. Things are going to go where they go, technology-wise, that is. And if you're in the way, man, then you're just going to get steamrolled over. And that's kind of what's happening with movies right here. Theaters are trying to push back. Directors are pushing back. And now this pandemic has came in and changed everything. And piracy, I don't think, is the biggest problem you need to worry about right now. I think, you need to figure out how this business is going to work with the changes that we have. I mean, but I'll give you the last word on that because that's all I already got to say.
No, I mean, I don't have much more to say to that. I think it's going to be interesting. I think Tenet has, for better or for worse, it's exactly what it wants to be, which is this weird guinea pig litmus test of what we can and can't do going forward. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I wanted to get on the record whether you think it'll make that money so we can check back in on this in the future. Yeah, definitely curious to see how this would go. And I'll even say this much. I think that whole thing that they were trying to test out with Unhinged, I think they're trying to, because they were trying to get people back in the theater. I didn't want to go, and I said, give me a screener. They gave me a screener. But I think that this movie right here, I think that they were kind of hinting at, let's see how this test goes for getting people back in the theaters with crazy Russell Crowe, and then maybe that'll set the stage for how we can do this with Tenet, which I'm curious to see because there are some people who are going to the theater to watch the Russell Crowe movie. So that might be a test for how to put safety measures in place, might be a test to see the enthusiasm for going back in the theaters, and it might be a test to see just how much this would work to get people back in the theaters as far as screeners go, or screenings. And if screenings can work, they could probably figure out more, use that as a test for figuring out how to get the public back in the theaters more. So we'll see. You're right. Everything's up in the air. Nobody knows anything really concrete, but we'll see.